What's your best fire me? I fucking dare you moment from work? I once called in sick to my part-time job at Club Monaco. My manager told me that if I couldn't find anyone to cover my shift, I was going to be fired. So I FaceTimed her from the ER and had the doctor explain to her that I needed an MRI cause they wanted to make sure I didn't have a brain tumor. I was working at a shoe store in a mall and I requested a week in August off for my wedding. My manager told me her boss wasn't happy about that and all I said was my wedding is more important than back to school sales. They didn't fire me. Per SE. They just stopped scheduling me and eventually my access to the employee website went away. That's called constructive dismissal and is illegal in some circumstances. Not actually allowed to talk about this, so to be vague. Company I worked for asked me to commit fraud for a large amount. I said fuck no. I told HR. Sat in my desk for a month getting paid to listen to podcasts at my desk all day until they wrote a severance agreement. I had more leverage than this company could deal with and I took a free month for their fuckery. I'm a correctional officer and I get told this on almost a daily basis by inmates. I told you no, so you're going to write me up and get me fired? Good luck. I know the rules and I cover my ass. That's why I'm still there and in 2 years have never had a single write-up. Didn't check the ID of an obviously over 21, possibly over 40, turned out to be undercover for the company for beer. I worked at a shitty gas station shop that was always desperate for employees. I told them to fire me if they wanted. Got a raise. My old boss said he'd fire me if I encouraged his girlfriend to get her nipples pierced. I hugely regret not doing that. When I didn't show up to my last shift. Listening to an obnoxious manager tell a roomful of workers that he expected 110% from everyone. I raised my hand and innocently asked if he would be paying us 110%. That ended the meeting. I was fired for missing work because my wife went into labor and I was at the hospital with her. Called my boss's boss. Was immediately given my job back with extra paid time off. I really should have sued. He can't fire us all. Air traffic controllers. 1981. I was the only forklift driver in the back at Lowe's. They wouldn't let me file a workers' comp sheet when I got pinned under a bathtub. So I went home that day and wrote up my 2-week. I have 1 week left and they offered to increase my pay by $1.50. I told them to fuck themselves and let my co-workers know that they offered me a raise. So now they get paid more because they can't lose anyone else. I don't have a story. But as a manager of 30 entry-level employees, I'm shocked how many of them try this. My response is always to fire them. It sucks. But it's one of the easier decisions in my job. I was working on commission sales. And when my paycheck exceeded the owner's take, he wanted to put me on salary, which amounted to a pay cut for me. When I said fuck you, he fired me. That's probably not what you meant by best. But I did get a better job. When your job is on the line, people seem to change. There is a very sexy woman I work with. Well, she left her gym bag in the break room. I wanted to get it back to the owner, so I looked inside and found a pair of yoga pants, and in a Ziploc bag there was a tiny black thong. As soon as I had the thong in my hand, the owner of the bag walks in the room while I have them in my hand. She thought I was a perv and threatened to see HR and get me fired. You sound like a creep. Not me, but my dad. Worked for a suicide hotline and someone told him their parent was coming in and was abusive. My father told them to leave the room if they could. The rules of the hotline are strict in that you cannot give any advice of any kind. The manager asked if my father would do what he did again. He said yes and was fired. What kind of suicide hotline can't give advice? Maybe because they could be held liable if their advice causes something bad? I think the same way you do, but maybe that's their reasoning. I worked in a liquor store through uni. One night, about 6 guys walked in, casually carrying a couple of screwdrivers amongst them. They grabbed a couple of bottles of spirits each from the shelf and walked out, and I let them. My boss would later yell at me for this. In the past I had chased/confronted people with relative success. But I'm not stupid and don't want to be stabbed for a few liters of Jack Daniels. Flipped a 15-year-old off. Was fired. Dumbest thing I have ever done. And best thing to ever happen. I hated that job. I want more background. I got fired on my birthday. Corporate texted me pics of them eating my cake later that day. I was making 6 figures. Reevaluated my life and now I'm 100% happy. Best thing to ever happen to me. I was working as an intern when one of the bosses from another department asked me to go find a ladder and gloves and climb up to remove a bird's nest above a doorway. Flat out told him no, that's not happening. Got called the Birdman by him from then on. Every day in the US Navy. Still in my job. But I've realized I'm pretty much almost irreplaceable due to my institutional knowledge. Everyone I started with bar one person has left over the last 2.5 years, and man, it's taken the stress out of the bad stuff. Even when I'm being told to make my communications a bit better, I'm like, what can they do? Fire me? Breaking a Ming vase over my boss's head. And then received a solicitor's letter asking for 4K for vase. Didn't actually say it to my boss. But 8 months pregnant and being talked to for being 5 minutes late from lunch, a lunch which I spent the time bawling my eyes out for multiple reasons. Not just pregnancy reasons. I may not have said it, but he knew.